Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Biohacking Beauty podcast. I'm Amitai Eshel, co-founder and CEO of Young Goose, the world's first biohacking skincare brand, and the host of this podcast. Every week, we bring you different specialists, different opinions on how to optimize your skin's health and health in general. Today, we have an incredible couple. Their name are David and Dara Woodward, and they are just a very good friend of ours, and in general, an incredible couple. They're a husband and wife team specializing in wellness through movement and aesthetics. I believe they are. What biohacking and health and longevity based business should be about. They believe in customizing and curating wellness strategies for each individual through education and using products and technologies that promote healing and improved well-being. A few things that we discussed on this podcast is their journey to the biohacking community, how they have learned to apply biohacking to their lives and obviously lives of their clients, and why living consciously is important for quality of life and well-being. That was an incredible conversation, really bridging something that when we started this podcast was part of our mission, which is bridging the art and science of longevity to skin health and how these two relate to each other: whole body wellness, movement, pain and inflammation management, gut health management, and the skin. I think it was a very important and beautiful episode. So without further ado, please welcome Dara and David Woodward. We finally have our beloved David and Dara. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you so much for having us, Amitai.
Aloha, Amitai.
Aloha. Do I reply aloha back, or am I supposed to reply something else?
Perfect.
Awesome.
That's perfect.
Awesome. So first of all, I think conflict of interest is in order because, we love you to death. You guys are obviously a good friend of Anastasia and myself, and but it did start as a business relationship. So we met. Correct me if I'm wrong. We met at the Biohacking Conference 2021
in
Yes.
LA. Yes.
in LA.
Yeah.
In LA.
Was it
In
LA?
LA. So that
Yeah.
was. I think it was in Orlando.
Maybe it was Orlando, because it went Orlando, then it went to LA, and then it went back.
Okay. All I know
Yeah.
is that I was at Dr. Morguelin's booth.
Oh, Dr. Barry. Yeah.
Dr. Barry's booth. And
I was at DNA Company, which was right next
which
door
was
to
right
you
next
folks.
door.
Yeah.
I think we were
And-
very lucky to have DNA Company next to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for some reason, I kept, I don't know, just kept getting pushed towards your side. And I didn't know much about, you folks or Young Goose. And so finally I just went, I was, okay, what is this? Why do you want me to come here? And that's how it started.
Yeah, and so basically, I think your space is super unique, but I think I want to start by asking a question I ask often, which is, I think in the field of health in general, I would say supplementary health, because I think it could be under many names. There are two main players. Like the first players, the predominant players are people who had issues with their own health and went on a journey to resolve it, developed an interest or empathy towards other people, and are now on a mission they see themselves in people that they share their information, their healing journey and information with. And then there are psychos such as myself who are just like nerds of that are, as Dara says, they're just drawn to it, right? Like there is no real explanation. There's something with the mechanisms of aging that or optimal performance that just uh, they we like to tinker with. So I'm wondering where you fall within this spectrum.
Oh my goodness. So we definitely, created this space because these are all answers to a lot of the health challenges that we had. So,
Hmm.
I mean, I'll start, by talking about skin.
Hmm.
I was put on birth control at 15 because
Hmm.
my acne was
Hmm.
just it was crazy. Um and then the birth control started to mess with my cycle, right? And then the doctor put me on Accutane, and I believe I was on Accutane for
A good
9
while.
months.
Hmm.
And
Felt like a good while.
this is fast forward to we were 16, 17.
Right.
We had been together already, and I remember him telling me, and it sticks out in my mind so much that he told me, he goes, "You're starting to smell different." And I remember being so desperate, just not wanting to leave the house without a paper bag over my head
Wow.
because of all the acne. And I hated that feeling. But it also scared me, I feel like, a little bit more when he made that, for whatever reason, that comment, when he said that to me when we were 17, made me stop and like, what's going on, with my body. I mean, the Accutane, of obviously, it dried me out,
Yeah.
right? So more so, my menstrual cycle got um, even worse. My PMS symptoms. That's when I first started having migraines. It's when I first
Hmm.
started having back pain and cramps, and I started having these weird skin conditions all throughout my body.
Hmm.
And I remember that's the first time I went to the doctor, that for them trying to figure out what was going on with my digestion. I was not pooping, and then I was pooping too much, and then pooping too much and throwing up. And then I was getting my cycle every other week, and I knew
Wow.
inside it had to be something. And I was still on the birth control,
Wow.
so I was on birth control and Accutane,
Yeah.
and it continued because I was so scared to get off of Accutane, right? Because I was so scared of going back to that, not wanting to leave the house without a paper bag over my head.
Yeah.
But I think it was finally when we turned 18, I was like, you know what? There's got to be a different way. And at the same time, my dad bought my mom and I a facial at
Hmm.
this spa, and I had no idea what a facial was. I had no idea what a spa was. And so my mom and I went, and that was the first experience I had with skincare, facials. Right? Prior to that, skincare was buying the Clean and Clear from
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
drugstore, Noxzema. I don't even remember. There were like so many things,
Oh yeah.
right, that I tried.
Alcohol, like basically just
Everything
trying.
was, yeah,
Yeah.
everything was even more drying.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm still putting on the makeup to try and,
Oh yeah.
at the
Yeah.
same time, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So
And not taking into consideration lifestyle because we're 18, right?
we're
Not
eating
taking
Of
into,
whatever.
course.
yeah, eating
Yeah.
whatever, not and I was an
Oh,
athlete, right?
and no sunscreen. Like we were,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah, the
the
worst.
worst. Like
The
worst
worst.
sunburn. Like
Yeah, and I ran track,
yeah.
right? So I was in the sun all the time.
Right.
Anyway, finally, when we turned 18, I was like, I could just feel my body. It felt like it was deteriorating. I felt
Hmm.
like my brain was deteriorating. I remember having these emotional outbursts that I never had before, right? Like I couldn't remember anything on my math quiz. I couldn't remember anything that my teacher said. And then I would cry about it. Like,
Hmm.
just these uncontrollable bouts of just emotions. So finally, right before we graduated, I remember I got off of it and I went to have my facial. And the esthetician, and I'm so grateful for that esthetician, she was so helpful. She was like, "Dara, all these scars and all these, I can help you with it." Right. And so that was also my first experience with a traditional microdermabrasion.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and started teaching me about, facial cleansers and serums. And that was the first time I became aware of, anti-aging. Because I didn't know, all these things that I was actually aging my body and making my scars look worse and making my skin look worse. And then fast forward, we went to college. Ended up in the mainland. And we met this guy who was an old school. He called himself a chiropractor, but he was, to me, he was like a witch doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And started looking at my eyes and my tongue and telling me about, my diet, telling me about my digestion, and all of that. And that's kind of how we first started getting into, I would say, like alternative medicine.
Yeah, being a
Yeah.
little bit more connected with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a volunteer. He was a midwife, because in Pennsylvania, there's all these small towns that women don't have access to clinics. They're so far away.
Yeah.
And so I volunteered as a doula to
Mm.
learn about women's health, about health in general. And anyway, that's kind of how it started. I mean, you can tell him a little bit more about Isaac. But
Yeah, no, that's exactly where I was gonna
Yeah.
go with it too. But before I go there, just a disclaimer: when she said that she smelled different, I said that it was all about how you say it, not
Yeah.
what you
No,
say. I I didn't come on and say like, "Oh, you smell weird."
Yeah.
You know, I really, it was more of like, "Oh, you smell a little different." You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was something that I do remember,
Yeah.
and I didn't intend to, make you feel
No,
like that way, but
but
it
I'm
did
always so
change. Yeah.
grateful for that moment, right?
Yeah.
'Cause it
Well,
brought love.
David, as a married person, I know that it's not what you say, it's not how you say it, it's how it's heard from the
Interpreted.
other
Yes.
side.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. I like that. So, well, what's funny is my journey started even back in that transition from high school to college as well,
Uh-huh.
um, where, you know, I played competitive volleyball, since I was 12 years old. And, a lot of colleges were scouting, since we were 14 all the way to 18. And junior Olympic tournaments I would play around the US. And everything that was told to me was you gotta make sure you take like supplementation, you gotta work out so many times a day. And I had a problem with being able to actually put on weight. My metabolism was working fast, but that's at that time that's what it was told to me. But a lot of it
Yeah.
was just the kind of nutrition that really wasn't being delivered efficiently. And so, I was given, or introduced to a lot of supplementation that was really creating a lot more inflammation in my body that I recognized. And it was something that I found out, as I was working or playing competitive volleyball, transitioning from an NAIA school to a Division One. That's like a huge jump in the kind of training methods and regimens that we were under. And I was getting injured I would say like every other 3 to 4 weeks. And I was like, well, this is not right. Like if I'm putting in this work and I'm eating this and I'm taking that, like I shouldn't be breaking down this fast, right? I'm breaking out, like, like my weight would fluctuate like 10, 15 pounds, and it would change like every other week. It's like, what's going on? And finally, and it had to happen to be after my college career, where as I was working through my doctorate in physical therapy, I was getting interested in like, okay, what are these things that are contributing to inflammation, right? Everything, that we've learned that we got connected with when we were in Pennsylvania, we ended up in Pennsylvania together, out of coincidence, actually, or, kismet, if you will. But, we learned from him, from that friend that we're talking about. His name is Frank. He told us that all inflammation starts at the gut, and which makes sense. Majority of our inflammation starts there, and it shows
Yeah.
up in our joints, in our skin, and whatnot. And it just intrigued me. So I went down this whole experimentation during my last 2 years of my doctorate of just trying out new diets, and I would give it a fair amount of time, at least 3 months I became that nerd that you're talking about,
Yeah.
right? And because I wanted to desperately find out like what is it that is going to help me, right? And tried this, blood type diet. We've tried
Mhm.
like I went vegan, I went vegetarian, I went,
Mhm.
you name it, and I remember one time because she was already moved home and I was still finishing up my doctorate, and webcams just came out at the time, right? And we were looking at each other through this webcam. Meanwhile, it's like all blocky, and
Yeah.
we were looking at robots, right? And she's like, what happened to your neck? And I was like, what's wrong with my neck, And
Yeah.
just like how she said, like, oh, what is that? Like I was talking about her smell. She was talking about how I
Mhm.
looked, and I was very self conscious about it. Where I was like, what's wrong? And she's like, you look like you lost a lot of weight. And at that time, I was trying to run a lot.
Mhm.
I felt like in the beginning, like what I noticed is like every diet change that I went through, there's a big change within the first couple of weeks,
Mhm.
right? And then just plateaus, right? And but every time I would do that, it would create some sort of stress, hormetic especially, right?
Mhm.
And so like my eyes were a little bit more sunken in. She's like, what's going on? And it's like, no, I'm just trying out these different things. And I finally found something that I could connect with. um, I gave up a little bit on it for a while. Yeah, and I tried just, oh, maybe I'll just stick with just organic, right?
Mhm.
And we went that route until we decided to get married, a few years after I got my doctorate. And then we had our son.
Mhm.
So fast forward to that. Um, when we had our son, we noticed that he had, this is where we got introduced to what eczema was, right?
Mhm.
And we heard about it, we've seen it, kind of here and there, but we became very familiar with it. And
Yeah.
we did connect ourselves with alternative health practitioners. We were still seeking out advice from, the Western medicine as well. Everybody was really giving us advice on how to address it from the outside, like how to put stuff on it, right?
Yeah.
And we did get introduced to whole food supplementation, things like that. And, gratefully, he was able to take it in, but it really was not hitting the mark,
Mhm.
right? And it got to a point, and this is when Isaac was just before he turned two. Yeah, he was still, and we were
It was
introducing
about
him to
15
foods.
months.
We were
Yeah.
already introducing him to foods, solids at that point because he
Mhm.
had some teeth and whatnot. And I remember we were feeling so tired, and
Yeah.
we were so tired, sick and tired of feeling sick and tired
Yeah.
because I would get sick. We would get sick every other week or so because we were trying to remedy what, the inflammation that was going on within our son, Isaac. And so I finally went online and I typed out resilience because I had to find a solution. I typed this on Google, resilience. And ironically, on Google, I found Dave Asprey. And this was in the very beginning stages of like, he still had like his podcast
Mhm.
on his YouTube channel and his weird hair and his house. Oh God, I was like, this is a weird looking dude. What is he talking about? About fats being good for, saturated fats and putting butter in your coffee. And, well, like this guy's going to give us a heart attack, and
Mhm.
how does this do that? Right. But he started explaining, the science behind it, but also the kind of guests that he was bringing on were actually, real doctors and scientists and people that have gone through, different journeys. And um, some of the things that connected with us was just how do you reduce inflammation, at its core, right? Is that you fix your gut, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things that we decided to do. More importantly, we became to understand that really we weren't giving him the kind of nutrition that he needed.
Yeah.
More importantly, healthy fats.
Mhm.
What's crazy is that like now I say this all the time, but if you really want to test if something works, kids are brilliant because they're so resilient. Number
Yeah.
one, this is terrible for me to say out loud, but at the same time, their cells turn over so fast that you'll know it works. And they have
Yeah.
no experience to give you,
Yeah.
false evidence otherwise, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we literally gave him bacon and eggs. And I totally honest about it. I could not believe that his eczema went away in 2 days. I
Wow.
was like, this is ridiculous. That doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
That piqued my interest. So I said, if it works for him, I wonder what it's going to do for us.
Yeah.
And this is how we started with it, and we just started diving more, not even just with looking at what Dave had to offer. But I was interested in who he talks to and who he connects with, and then it led me, into other, type of directions of, how can we evolve as what we do, respectively, as an esthetician or me as,
Yeah.
a physiotherapist, right? Um, so
Yeah. And then synchronicity just happened, and
yeah,
we just started attracting more of that and
Yeah.
getting that type of information. I think that's the first time we did a cleanse
that
with global
is,
healing.
yeah, we went
Yeah.
through global healing at the time, and um, we've done so many cleanses at that point.
Hmm.
Before that, I mean, everything you think of, I mean, with higher fiber kind of content,
Hmm.
it just didn't do it as I guess in the way that we connected with
Hmm.
most,
Yeah,
other than
because
how
cleanse,
global
it's like
healing does
saying
it.
a vitamin, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Or a protein, right? There
Hmm.
are
Right.
the difference between one cleanse to another is essentially, I mean, essentially the every cleanse could be not only affect your body differently, but it could literally be a completely different journey that someone takes. So
For
Absolutely.
sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
But that's how we
yeah.
got.
Some
Yeah.
words I would say are even like they should be taken out of the dictionary. Like describe what this is without saying the word cleanse, and you're going to have a completely different. The two products will not
That's
be
true.
able to. They're not going to be able to be chalked together to the same pile. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Right.
so you were doing this cleanse.
Yeah.
No.
So
Yeah.
we're doing this cleanse, and yeah, that's how we started our biohacking journey,
Hmm.
Hmm.
if you will, and it totally, changed my perspective on aesthetics so much. So I actually went to school to be a pilot,
Hmm.
Wow.
and everything that we went through changed our life so
Of
much. And
course. Yeah.
I that's how I got into aesthetics, because I remember that feeling, like how I was saying, not wanting to leave the house without a paper bag, so desperate to do anything, right? Literally, that I would hurt my body.
Hmm.
And I was like, there's more people out there like me. And like, that became a passion for
Hmm.
us to educate and just help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you guys are again the kind of the onus of bringing you on the podcast, even though I would again it's crazy that it didn't happen sooner, but the onus was the fact that you guys are starting a podcast, and I'm super excited for this podcast and for you to share your incredible knowledge with other people because and we'll talk about it more, but um, I think you guys are so unique, especially to a person like myself that you know is a co-founder of a skincare company, and then also does jujitsu like he's gonna compete next week, and also uh, gets depressed if he didn't do an ice bath for 2 days in a row. So you guys' perspective is incredible. Within that, I really want to maybe talk a little bit about more about inflammation from both of you guys' point of view. Do clinically, like when you guys are working day in day out, do you kind of zero in on inflammation as a negative factor, or is there any type of like duality that you it's some kind of a biphasic approach to inflammation? Do you try and say, as an esthetician, this is how I harness, control damage in order to induce positive results while obviously lowering the overall inflammatory burden in the body? Obviously the same thing with physical therapy. I think the best guy, I mean the poster child of this right now is knees over toes guy, right?
Yeah.
In physical therapy, because this is a guy
I see.
who came and said, you know what, everything that people told you about the knees not supposed to pass the toes when you're doing like lower body movements is BS. You're doing it anyway. Let's introduce inflammation slowly, in other words, and reconstruct people's needs from introducing some kind of stress. So I wonder how you guys view inflammation as a whole, and maybe even how you use it to your advantage.
Okay. Well, um, I talk about this on a daily with a lot of my clients and patients as well,
Hmm.
mainly because they always want to know like how, what do I do when this comes up, right?
Hmm.
And it always shows up in movement, right? Or it shows up like how it looks, whether it be in their knee, ankle,
Hmm.
wrist, hand and wrist, or shoulder. But inflammation is not necessarily a bad thing. It is an important phase, of healing, but it becomes an issue when there's an overabundance of it.
Hmm.
Especially when it's, you know, kind of the long term, if it stays there around the joint, for example, around the joint
Hmm.
capsule, you're going to notice that there's going to be some sort of disturbance within proprioception or body position awareness, right? Just mainly due to the pressure itself. The other part is also the breakdown of tissues that start to occur, right?
Yeah.
This is just the nature of the histamine production within inflammation itself, right? So, in my perspective and how I approach things, um, in this respect, I go with it's actually one of the more ancient ways of taking care of inflammation, not necessarily ice. I will introduce later though, and I've noticed a number of amazing results, especially in people that don't do really well with an ice bath.
Hmm.
Um, I'm a huge proponent of ice baths, by the way, but um, I use a lot of compression.
Yeah.
And this is where me and a friend of ours, Kelly Starrett, I don't know if you've met him
Yeah.
before, good friend of mine as well. We, I am in the same house with him in regards to managing that inflammation, strategically with that compression. And
Yeah.
people might look at it and feel like it's gonna create death immediately or a tourniquet of sorts. But it is the most efficient way of taking care of that swelling due to the inflammation.
Yeah.
Once we're able to manage that, then you can kind of follow up. What I usually do is follow up with some sort of modality, whether it be with the red light. Red light does really well as well with repair, but I traditionally use a lot of the newbie,
Yeah.
which I using direct current to help restore movement, especially if there's not any damage to the joint yet
Yeah.
specifically. But yeah, managing the swelling due to the inflammation is huge, but it can't
Yeah.
be neglected. Inflammation is
Mhm.
super important at first.
Yeah.
Dara, do you see when he as a, again as a master? By the way, mastery in skin health is dealt around way too easily. Everyone's a master. So, but really, as a true master of the art, when he, before you kind of give your answer to my question, when he describes the way that he has a relationship with inflammation as a therapist, do you see correlations to skin health? Do you see correlations to the way that you would approach it, or do you feel like skin health, since we're dealing with non-articulated tissue or anything like that, you view it a little bit differently?
Um, no, I mean, I would say so. How I view it is the individual,
Hmm.
because a lot of time when it's showing up in the skin,
Hmm.
there's so much that's already happening within, right? It is energetic,
Hmm.
and that energy becomes physical,
Mhm.
right? And so when we're talking about inflammation within the skin, most of the time they see it, but they're numb to the energy that's happening inside. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
It does.
So
It does. It does. Yeah.
so a lot of times they're coming to me because of what they see,
Mm.
but not wanting to feel what actually is happening, right? And
Yeah.
so that's why I love your products. I feel like there is too much inflammatory responses in skincare.
Mm.
I
Hmm.
feel like, especially in, I guess in the Western part, there's a
Yeah.
lot of products that will, I feel like they're irresponsible with creating inflammation,
Mm.
right? Breaking down, but just like how you educate people about the rebuilding is only going to be as good as your inside, the health on your inside,
Yeah.
right? And that's something that's a miss when people in skincare educate their customers about that. Like, yes, microneedling and lasers and these peels that go below 2.0, which is just mind blowing
Mm-hmm.
to me, right? But the rate and the success at which you will heal is going to be determined by the health inside on a
Mhm.
cellular level.
Yeah.
And I do believe in creating inflammation, especially like, okay, so the acne, right? I feel like it's a progression. First of all, the acne, like how I believe it needs to be cleaned out first, right? That bacteria's
Mm-hmm.
got to be cleaned out first. And then asking, or working with my client on what is creating this
Right.
Yeah.
inflammation. Because
Similar,
especially if
a
it's
similar approach.
hormonal,
Yeah,
right?
similar approach to what I do. Yeah,
Especially if it's a
Yeah.
hormonal,
yeah.
they're going to put something on topically. It's going to go down for maybe a month. And then once that trigger, whatever that causes their
Mhm.
hormones to go
Yeah.
out of balance again, it happens in the same area.
Yeah. It's
Mm-hmm.
patterns.
Yeah,
Well,
These
it
are the
first of all,
patterns.
I've never thought of, I describe it in like completely different ways, but what you said, Dara, is kind of genius because our skin is, for a lot of the things, to say it's a last resort is quite literal,
Hmm.
but
Mhm.
also depends, I guess, on where you are as far as like your age, your obviously functional biological age, where you are as far as, again, as you said, about hormonal fluctuations. The skin a lot of the times has a completely different, it doesn't actually, the skin's job is not to show you how healthy you are. It can show other people how sexually viable you are.
Right.
Mhm.
Or for example, it could show other, obviously as we grow older, the skin takes a more of a barrier role, so it starts
Hmm.
sacrificing itself. It starts obviously um, sacrificing its protein to glycation, or sacrificing
Right.
DNA to UV, etc. But it's never an indication, like a personal indication of how you feel. Other things do it, from emotions to
Trauma.
stiffness,
Hmm.
Mhm.
trauma. So this is incredible what you said, where when someone comes to you and they have already something that has literally bubbled up to
Yeah.
the surface, to the
Yeah.
skin, they can
Yeah.
already be completely deadened to what
Yeah.
happens inside. Or, by the way, I think both are really bad scenarios, or, by the way, are completely oblivious. Like, obviously, we're
Yeah.
talking about acne. The person is so, as a teenager, is so, their body is redlining anyway so hard. They can, they can eat the worst food in the world, not have acid reflux, or not
Mhm.
feel acid reflux, but have kind of all but develop, gut dysbiosis, or whatever is you would actually feel gut acid reflux first, as an
Mhm.
example. um what what about David? Do you see any is it the do you feel like people, obviously, if someone has a muscle that's misfiring, or obviously
Mhm.
like chronic pain, or um anything like that, do people come to you numb already, or is it kind of beforehand?
No, I do treat the wide spectrum as you're
Uh-huh.
mentioning. Um, the ones that are able to come see me in the acute phase are like, I feel very fortunate to see them earlier. In other words, because that's when I can actually create, this quote unquote magic that will
Mm-hmm.
help them prevent the long term, right? But it's kind of interesting because my background in manual therapy and assessment, my mentor told me that, because you're learning in this method, just be prepared to be that one practitioner that sees all the rare cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
That small percentage of people.
Yeah.
And it didn't really make sense to me until after I started my own. And yeah, I do see some people that do just get it. They're like, man, you know what? If I see him before it becomes something, right? As a true primary prevention, in other words, that I'm going to see, long term, benefits. Or if I see him right after my accident or right after, this incident, I know that he's going to be, he's going to help me get through this, and heal faster. But majority of the population, of the patients that I see and the clients that I work with already have this history, and what we call like a dirty canvas type of presentation, right? There's this masterpiece over masterpiece is what we call it, right? And once you start kind of working through these different masterpieces, then you really start, really revealing like who is this individual, right? What is this true potential of this individual?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'll say like majority of my population of clients are this dirty canvas, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, and I think that's kind of a point of convergence where I think the best client is the clients that comes to you without any issues, right? It's like client that comes and says, all I want is really to feel the same way I feel or look the same way I look,
Right.
in 5, 10 years. Then how do I achieve that? I think that would probably be your the easiest client to deal with for both of you. I feel
Well, yeah, well, there we
like
have
you're like,
probably.
yeah, but it doesn't happen. So
No, what's funny is that like no, we've had clients that have said that,
Yeah.
but we're not here to tell them or overwhelm them with like, what these are the list of things that I notice within your movement or within your assessment of skin.
Hmm.
It's just we're giving them honest feedback of what we're noticing according to what our expertise is, right?
Mhm.
And so, like they may come in and say, because we're smiling because we've had these clients recently where they're like, oh yeah, I get a facial every 2 weeks,
Uh-huh.
and I know what it's like, but they have
Mhm.
no idea what they're in for, right?
Mhm.
And
Myself included, I gotta
in the
say.
same respect, right? Because it ends up, like they'll come in and they'll say like, oh, like nothing's wrong with my, I don't really have that much pain. But then, as we start going through conversation and just working through different patterns, and taking a look at them and just asking basic subjective questions, basic in my opinion, at least in regards to diet or what's happening,
Mhm.
in the comprehensive way. Then they're like, oh, yeah, maybe we do have some things,
Mhm.
to work on. Every once in a while, we'll get some people that'll just, come in for the service of, and then that'll be it. But
Mhm.
the ones that are, kind of numb, they kind of numb themselves to, what is, in another way of creating resilience in their life or
Yeah.
having knowledge of. But yeah,
It's awareness and education, right?
absolutely.
There's a reason they walked into this door,
Mhm.
right? And so like, the client uh he was talking about that came
Hmm.
in, right? "Oh, I get a facial every 2 weeks." Like, why? I said, "You
Mhm.
shouldn't have to have a that's too much." She's like, "Oh, it
Mhm.
is?" I said, "Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just, praying that you'll have some skin to do facials
Mhm.
on
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
the next 20 years, right?"
Hmm.
And come to find out, I mean, just by, there's a lot you can learn about somebody by just touching them, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was a lot going on, and it's about the education and the awareness. And then, so lucky to be in a position of being in a teaching people about being preventative,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Inflammation, anti-age, all the things that are going to show up. It's going to show up because just
Hmm.
like, how you say it's an accumulation, right? It's
Yeah.
never sometimes it is something major that happened, right? That tipped it over,
Hmm.
you know, but it's an
Yeah.
accumulation of things of foods that you ate, decisions that you made, and things that you did.
Yeah. I mean, again, like you said, another um, very subtle but very important point in the game of long in this dichotomy of longevity and optimal performance. I think obviously there are three pillars as far as I'm concerned. One of them is resilience, and I think this is I think probably in the last 15 years, it has been introduced more and more to athletics,
Hmm.
but in skincare, it's non-existent. It is non-existent. Um, but the other two major pillars, obviously, are what in sports is going to be optimal performance. In skincare, I would say it's optimal appearance.
Hmm.
or youthful appearance, and the other one is longevity. And I think you said something extremely wise when you said, I just hope you have skin to work with in 20 years, because almost a zero sum game, I would say.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because if you are requesting, if you're over, and again, that's kind of what you referred to earlier, if you're overstimulating, if you're kind of
Yeah.
over over renewing, it's like,
Hmm.
I remember, obviously everyone remembers Michael Jackson and his nose. What is that? It's demand for renewal on a tissue, to the extent that the tissue cannot actually regenerate, cannot respond.
Mhm.
And what is
Hmm.
aging really? It's the accumulation of unrepaired damage. So every time we ask for renewal, it is a potential for more mistakes, for more unrepaired damage. So I think it's a very wise thing that you said. And in sports, like, it is well known. I mean, the best athletes in the world, leaving Tom Brady aside for a second, the best athletes in the world get, their joints replaced in 45, right? And why is that? It's because they asked for renewal, they asked for repair too many times, over and over and over again,
Hmm.
so there's no tissue left there. Is that I understand that was a discussion with that person, but is that a discussion in a facility that, I would say, again, that is an answer for acute concerns? As you said, someone walks into the door, they must have a concern. Is that even a discussion? Those three pillars.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're obviously, and they're walking in the door because they've done the same thing
Hmm.
again and again and again and still not getting
Expecting a
the
different,
result,
yeah,
which is our journey,
right.
right? Everything that we did was still not getting us the results that we were wanting,
Yeah.
right? And so we needed to go a little bit deeper,
Hmm.
or we needed to do, uh, tweak it,
Yeah.
get
Hmm.
a little bit more specific.
Being
Yeah.
aware of it first, though, is a huge part, and most
Hmm.
of us are not. Like we weren't aware,
Hmm.
Yeah.
right? So,
So how often do you see? So you guys, how many of your clients would you say are seasonal clients, and how many live in Hawaii? I think it's an answer, by the way, that I asked you when we were there. But
mhm.
what do you see? Do you see a mixture of both, or how do you see it?
I think we do see a mixture of both.
Hmm.
Fortunately, we're starting to gain a little bit more traction on people that are here, that
Hmm.
are living here, which is great. One of the that was one of the reasons why we're changing the way that we're kind of pushing out the education out,
Hmm.
right? In regards to our marketing, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, a good number of our clientele also, as you're mentioning, in the term of seasonal, yeah,
Yeah.
they do come by, because they'll spend time here, whether it be for business or for filming, whether they be
Yeah.
in the industry or whatnot. So it's very, very common where we'll have clientele that'll come in specifically to find people that have these different technologies, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Or are carriers of young goose, right?
Hmm.
Or different supplementation. Sometimes they'll come in because of the certain companies that we're partners with in regards to
Yeah.
supplementation or products. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But more and more, we are creating a community,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? Because of the education. And, like how we educate people, a lot of people come in, especially local people. They're like, oh, well, these are for only, high performance
Yeah.
athletes
Yeah.
or high performance people. And I'm like, well, you're high performing too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these high performance athletes or these high performance, people seek these things out because they run themselves through the ground,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they need to recover in order to do that again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we as everyday people, we don't eat good enough. We don't
Right.
take enough supplementation, get enough sleep and exercise. And so you run yourselves to the ground every
Mhm.
day expecting that demand to
Yeah.
be the
Yeah.
same day in and day out, right? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
sustainable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to your point, to the viewers, people who see us through video, they'll see in the background the headset, the brain tap headset,
Brain tap.
and
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
for me, and I think when I say brain tap, that is for example one of the technologies that I use personally. It's my choice.
Mhm.
I don't think it's the only choice,
Mhm.
Mm,
but what I found magical is that third door opening with mindfulness or brain tap, which is, you know, as a person that runs companies, has a podcast that has a couple listeners, and has a newborn, again, obsessed with jujitsu, etc., etc., etc. I actually ran out of ways to offload stress in
Yeah.
ways that do not cause stress somewhere else. So, for
Yeah.
example,
mm,
obviously, like running a company is like super stressful, and then you're going to say, okay, but I'm going to work out extremely hard, and I'm going to burn off some of that stress. But you can't do it every time you're stressed, right?
Mhm.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
brain tap, for example, is incredible because it doesn't really. And again, brain tap mindfulness, and a new app I discovered called Luminate, which is like brain
Mm,
tap with a uh, flashlight of your phone. Um,
yeah.
so these things I've discovered are almost a um, no cost as far as like stress somewhere else. Maybe the stress on the eyes, I don't know, but stress somewhere else. But you can kind of have another modality where you inject some balance to your life. um, Obviously, again, the headset is behind you, so I'm assuming that is part of a conversation. But how do you even introduce that into a conversation with a high performer, with someone that is only interested in their 11 line behind between their eyebrows? How does that conversation go? Once you're doing the facial, you're telling them, by the way, you can also uh, focus on your breath for 15 minutes. How do you do it? I think both of you might have different answers, but yeah, how do you talk about mindfulness as a whole?
By just being present with them out of
Absolutely.
Hmm.
love and concern.
Hmm.
Because, like I said, you can feel so much, right, when you're
Exactly.
touching somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not about the 11s or the scarring or
Mm,
the acne or the thinning of the skin, right? It's the energy
Yeah.
that they're exuding and that I can feel. And it's just by that, like with love
hmm.
and
Yeah.
concern, and just, really just talking to them about them and finding something that I feel like they would connect on.
Hmm.
Something start very superficial,
Hmm.
Yeah.
right? And something like breath is
Hmm.
really easy right? And if I'm present and I'm calm and I'm open. I mean, they're in a very vulnerable situation already. They're lying down,
Yeah.
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And it's just bringing it up
Yeah.
Yeah.
with love and concern. And it could be just asking, "How are you feeling today?"
It's exactly what we
That's
do.
it.
Yeah. That's the very first thing that we ask every client is, how are you feeling today? And it starts when they first enter. I mean, you've been in our place. As soon as you enter, you're like, most people say that they feel like they're transported somewhere else, amidst of what it looks like outside of the space that we're in. But also you know, the brain tap, things like this, or like how we use the newbie, to kind of or reset or balance out your fight or flight response, right? Or the biocharger or whatnot.
Hmm.
Things like this that we have are just tools. These are tools that are meant, in our opinion, to tap into our nervous system, to open up this space, in where we feel like there's going to be a little bit of resistance, and sometimes we don't provide ourselves the space, which is the presence that we're talking about, to
Hmm.
allow the kind of energy that we need to put into ourselves in order to see repair,
Yeah.
to see changes happen. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I and I think again, as someone, a lot of the times when I talk with people about whether, by the way, it's about plastic surgery, I talk to people about injections, because obviously a lot of people ask us about injections, and I can't say that I have an opinion, but I do want to provide advice if people seek one, or to physical manipulations, anything that requires anything that I deem, intelligence is important. You need to know what's going on, but
Yep.
what I call hand mileage is the most important. How many times have you experienced a body, a face, etc. I think it is dramatically more important, obviously, as time goes on. So I completely understand what you're saying. As someone who has asked thousands of people how their day is going,
Yeah.
going through the entering through the door, it is it's almost like the question I had in the beginning about, tell me what you are, and the conversation goes from there.
Right.
It's incredible how you can kind of develop a kind of litmus test of people.
Yeah.
So how many people, one of the goals of this podcast when I started, before Chelsea, shout out to Chelsea, our podcast producer, made me, she said, you're talking about ridiculous things. Stop talking about jujitsu in a beauty podcast. You have to talk about skin. Like, people are tuning in to understand how to have better skin, and you're talking to them about their gait or how they can swing a weight over their head. So, but one of my goals when we started this podcast a few years back was to find ways to improve people's overall health by kind of tapping into their yearning for better skin, to look
Yep.
younger, and to tell them, hey, like, again, like brain tap, or high intensity interval training, or sleep, or
Mhm.
stress management, all of those things are important for your skin. But really, what I'm telling them is, I want you to be a healthier person. How many people do you kind of refer to each other? How many people are you saying, your face is partially fascia, and you need correct fascial movement in all
Right.
areas in order for you to, to have a healthy skin, or, vice versa, or how do you, obviously, one of the lectures that a couple years back kind of got very, very popular is when I said, your skin ages you. Your skin ages your brain. You accumulate senescent cells. They age your brain, and that ages your whole body. So how much of that kind of yin yang, cross promotion are you guys experiencing?
I mean, I would say majority of our clientele, happens that way, and in a very natural way.
Mhm.
It's not a very forceful thing like
No.
your face needs a little bit of work.
you know
I'm just kidding.
when you were exerting energy, you did a face where I said,
Yeah,
this guy
exactly.
needs to do it. Okay,
No,
so
but yeah, no, but seriously though, we do end up. I mean, in a very natural way, like the very common thing is, they'll see Dara walk by, as
Mhm.
I'm working with her, or majority of my patient population are women.
Uh-huh,
They watch her, as she's walking back and forth, checking out a
uh-huh.
client and coming back, and then they'll say something like, "Wow, your wife is beautiful," and I said, "Yeah, she is." Like, she goes, or they'll say, "Oh, you're such a lucky guy." I'm like, "Yeah, I am."
There was one time when she was a teenager that her smell, I mean, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that back, Valentine. No, but in seriousness, no. But that's what they end up seeing is, they see us moving around. They see how we move, how we present ourselves. Like, sometimes they'll walk in and they'll see one of us working out, or doing something purposeful, intentional movement practice. In other words, this is what I call it, at least.
Mhm,
Um, and or they'll see me come out of I'll do a facial with Dara, and they're like, "Oh
mhm,
my gosh, where'd you come from?" And um, I'll explain the process with them, about why, she does extractions and all of this kind of stuff too, right? And so that's how I view how things kind of naturally happen in that way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I also feel like it's because we're so passionate about what we do,
Yeah.
right? I mean, yes, it's not just about the pimple, it's what's going on
Mm.
or the scarring, right?
Mhm.
Or it's not just about the neck ache, which so many times is actually they're feeling it physically, but it's not a physical fix,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? And so, but once we start, having these conversations, it's like, oh, well, what about why would my gut matter to my skin,
Mhm. Or
right?
joints, even.
Or
Yeah.
why would my divorce 4 years ago have anything to do with the pain in my hip,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? And so once we start talking about that and talking about how everything is connected, it's just we're so passionate about it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we're passionate about learning too.
Hmm.
Like we still make it a point to, like, especially the things that don't seem like they make logical sense. It intrigues us.
Yeah.
It's like, why do you think? And then we dive a little deeper into it, right? Just to see what else is there. But I think they see that part too, and then they feel a little bit inspired to learn more about themselves.
Hmm.
So
Uh-huh.
that's kind of the trend that I noticed too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like, when they come in, it's like they let go of
Mm,
something, a little bit of hurt, right?
right.
Yeah.
Little by little. And then more they get motivated to, really just because they're feeling a lot better than they felt in years.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when then they start looking at themselves differently and
Hmm.
feeling differently about
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And probably also, if you create results in one area, us
Hmm.
as human beings, we just naturally believe that you're more discerning, like you're just more intelligent. You knew how to take care of, fill in the blank.
Hmm.
Now I'm more open to hear your advice about, whatever that is, or
Yeah.
now I
Right.
trust your marital choices, and I'll listen to it. Uh, so uh, that is obviously, that is what's magical, and obviously we try and work with you guys, with Dara, as much as we're allowed. And I'm very intrigued about you guys as podcasts. Like, obviously, as someone that we every week sits in front at least every once a week, sits in front of a camera, sits in front of a microphone, and my mental practice is trying to imagine the person listening, not the person that I speak with. That's easy for me, again, like, you put me in a room, you already have two opinions. So how do you view the podcast? Like, you guys obviously have so much knowledge, that's beside the point, but how do you view the podcast? What would you like the podcast to be?
Our podcast.
Yes.
So in our podcast, it was a way for us to get more education, what we know.
Hmm.
And I feel like for me as an esthetician, it's more comfortable to do
Yes.
it this way in a conversation,
Hmm.
Hmm.
right? And just share experiences. I feel like people learn more when they can connect
Right.
Yeah.
with the feeling that somebody is feeling or the experience that somebody went through, right? And be like, oh my God, I went through that, or whatever,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's the best way to connect, and to also connect with each other,
Hmm.
connect with someone like you,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And how we just learn, and really it's compassion, right?
Yeah.
For somebody else's point of view, and for somebody else's journey, compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
I think in conversation, when we were really trying to discover, like, what is going to be a little bit different about our
Hmm.
podcast, because everybody is out there talking about the health and wellness and
Yeah.
educational journeys and whatnot. But through our conversations, we realized that one of the things that people don't mention a lot about also is how much healing happens through connection.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And one of the things that we have a term that we've coined a number of times is sanative or sanative connection,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like I said, connection through or healing through, excuse me, connection, right? And that's a huge element of what our podcast is about. We want to get to know these people, right? This is what we do with all of the people that we choose to partner with, right?
Mm-hmm.
People that we choose to carry their technologies or their products. We want to know who they are, and
Yeah.
where they come from, and share our educational journeys and our stories, of course. But that's where a lot of the healing happens, is when we're able to be present with another human being, right?
Yeah.
Where I feel like has been lost for that kind of a hiatus of 2019 and on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I think this is I think this is the most powerful strategy for longevity. I think
Absolutely.
connection um, I think obviously intergenerational connection is something that we
Yes.
know is extremely important for our mental, physical health. But I think in general, I think community, as you mentioned, that's the first thing you mentioned in this conversation. Community is stronger than NAD, spermidine, newbie, and even lifting weights. Which is difficult. So I completely agree. The question is the real question is, are you going to be singing the opening song of the podcast? I think this is
You know what's funny is actually the intro, the music intro that's part of our podcast is my recording, is me
uh-huh.
playing. I'm not
Fantastic.
singing, but it is an instrumental.
Oh, okay.
In and out, yeah, the
Okay.
intro and outro of it.
And in the video, we need Dara to be dancing.
Well,
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Fantastic. So, kind of to close, to kind of wrap things up, we're trying to keep podcasts under an hour. Most of the time fail, but we try. How do people work with you? Is that something they do normally through physical work, or do you guys offer some online coaching and support?
Yeah, majority of our clientele like to see us face to face, but we do also see a clientele online as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're asking like how they contact us, or
How would someone contact you? Obviously, Dara is who we are so fortunate. Dara, we kept the secret until now, but Dara is our trainer of professional accounts. Dara trains Young Goose's professional accounts, so that's pretty easy to work with Dara on that area. You just call Young Goose. Hey guys, I want to order some products, and we connect you with Dara for an online training if you're nice. If not, it's
nice.
she's fully booked.
if not, you get Amitai.
Exactly, and that's not
Yes.
going to do you any good. Uh, but so how does someone, an individual, reach out physically and also online?
So you can go to our website, naalponophysicaltherapy.com, and all of our contact information is on there. Our Instagrams are all linked on there. Naalpono Wellness is our IG handle, and for me, it's Naalpono Aesthetics with an A. And I do a lot of Young Goose videos and feature a lot of Young Goose products, which I'm so honored to do. Yeah. But yeah, on our website has all of our contact information
and services. Yeah.
Fantastic. And when do you guys plan to move to your bigger space? Do you know already?
Summer, August.
Yep. August, September, around there.
Okay.
Summer going into fall. Correct.
We will hold you to it. Fantastic. Guys, so thank you again. Two of our most favorite people on planet Earth. You guys are incredible business owners, parents, friends, professionals. I do not need to wish you, but I wish you continued success. You guys are killing it. And I hope more and more of the world gets to experience it. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Oh my goodness, and we feel all of that for you too. Thank you so much, Amasai.
Mahalo, Amatay.
Mahalo.